BluntCut MetalWorks, November 3rd, 2017. I've been asked why a lot of my knives have very high hardness. Well, first of all, when you soften it, you cannot make it hard again unless you go through the heat treat to austenize it and do everything again. So I leave it high that way that if you decide to soften it, you can. But also, maybe later on when I have more lab result, and then you might want to have your knife actually at the high hardness, because then you can utilize or leverage that hardness or your cool factor. But let me explain some basic methodology, which a lot of people, metallurgists already know or teaching about material science. And the most primitive one that we're talking about is if you have a box, you're going to pack oranges. How do you pack it? Of course, naturally, you throw it in there and shake it somehow. Then it usually settles in a really close pack. Basically, the close pack is you have all the ball, this case circle shape, touch each other. In other words, they all touch each other, then it's a close pack. But if you have to, of course, you can, if you pack it so you have 4 ball, and then in the gap, you put it so that, in other words, they all touch, but you touch as many as you can. But if you line them up, you have 4 balls like this and one on top of each other like this, then it's not as close. Versus if you have between the 4 and you have the 1 in the middle, and then now you can stack on top. They all arranged that way. That's called close pack. And so in metal, pretty much when you are say in the anneal state, which is they call the body center cubic. But actually before that, I think, let's talk about close pack because that's ideal scenario first. So when you heat up the steel and the 4 iron in 4 corner, and then you have carbon in the middle, and so in essence it's a square. And so, and then when you stack them, and you have it's plane, actually they get on the plane, they offset a little bit, so therefore think of the ball, they actually close pack. And then another shape that's close pack is the hexagonal, which is instead of shifting on the plane like this, they sort of intersecting like this. Think of intersecting because so therefore they fall into the gap. That little dip right there between the 4. And so now, that's why the FCC, you have a plane, you can slip it. So that's why you have, say, a retainer austenized, or more like a near iron, steel. It's on the plane, you can just slip. So therefore, really easy, very ductile, it can slip along. But when you convert the HCP, now you're interlocking it in this way. So that's why HCP is extremely hard. Actually, one of the crystal that's extremely hard, considered to be carbide, an epsilon carbide, or and so it's extremely hard. But that is the 2 shape. That is a close pack. And so, and while the anneal, in the anneal state, you have a body center cubic. That means you have now you're on 3-dimensional. Then the carbon no longer on plane anymore. They got off the plane a little bit. You hear the plane of 4 iron. The carbon is off the plane a little bit. So because of that, there's certain repelling. So the next layer to it, actually a little wider gap. So the packing ratio wise, if you have 100 unit of space, the close pack, you get 74%. And while the anneal and also monazite, which is the hardened state of steel, it's about 68%. So there's a 2. Why is it important? Because when you heat up the steel, when you heat treat, then you go to FCC, which is phase center cubic. and now you are close packing the metal. So even though, when you heat up, the metal expands this or that, but however, you pack it closely, but the metal very pliable at that point, it slips. But when you cool it, then they go back into shape. I mean, now you contract it, but also the transformation, because it takes a lot of energy for the carbon sit right in the middle on plane with 4 iron. So now it's cool, there's not enough space, so the carbon pop off the plane. And so now you have the body cubic, center cubic. And also when you go on side, then it's not only that, it's shear a little bit. So, but if you take out the stacking, then the shear or the body cubic is actually the same, because you can slice it into a 4 plus carbon, then you can just move it, and then you can stack it just like body cubic center. So that's why both the packing factor is 68%, out of 100 in this case. Excuse me, this thing is rocking around. So when you heat treat, then after you, let's say you quench it to room temperature, and then now you look at it, you say, okay, I got, they call dislocation. Dislocation, that means stress. I work know about the grain and this angle misaligned. That too complicated or complex. But we're talking about dislocation. And when you convert from the FCC, the austenite, to Monsai, which is a BCT, you can see the 74 and 68. Well, the problem is they take more space. BCT, the Monsai, take more space for that room. So as soon as you convert to Monsai, now you have pressure, stress. And when enough stress build up, there's no more room. So you end up with retained austenite. That means the FCC stayed there because so much pressure in order for the 4 iron and the carbon on plane. You need energy to put it in that plate. But if you put pressure against it, then it will stay that way. So you have retained austenite. And so now you have to deal with it. So the sum of dislocation is all the stress. If we retain austenite, we put the pressure around it, press into it, and then press out backward, out. So therefore that's stress. And Monsai push the shear, so that is the stress. Also that in essence, it gives, well, there are 2 kinds of Monsai, but I will ignore that. And so now that's stress. And also grain and subunit, they all work on carbide. They all put strain on the matrix overall, this whole solution, whole system. So what you have to do is you have to deal with it, and you have to look at the whole system there. And then you say, how much retained austenite? Let's say take, for example, let's take, say, one of the steel, and after you quench it, you could get anywhere between 2% or 1-2% to even 40%, depending on how much energy you put into the system and how much heat it up. And when you quench it, how much dislocation or stress prevent the austenite convert to Monsai or decompose or precipitate it to something else, because there's so much energy in the system. Or more like you still have a loaded, say, not a bomb, but a loaded system. All you have to do is snap it, and will you break? It will want to go to a lower energy state. So now you have to deal with, okay, this is all the reason why, as I explain my process, why I keep my hardness high and why it's working. It's not conformed, but why it's working. Or for me, I claim it's working. So you have to deal with retained austenite. So if you have a lot of retained austenite at room temperature after you quench, now you have 2 options. One, you can heat it up a little bit and the whole system up. And in this case, when you heat up, you have thermal expansion. And so now suddenly you release, you add little room. So the retained austenite, so now they have to decide, okay, now do we have enough energy, enough to shift it to Monsai shape? Or if enough to activate it to totally break it down instead of to the BCT. Instead of the BCT structure, you got they go to some more of a triangular or whatever the shape, the pyramid shape of cementite. So that is the thing is about it. When you heat up, the chance of it to go from alternate, go on one side, well, depend on the alloy and the way how it is and when you shift the conversion happen, and also how much the monazite dislocation from monazite itself precipitate or turn into cementite and ferrite to give it room for the titanium arsenide to change to monazite or cementite and ferrite. So that is one route. And when you people talking about cryogenic or level or in this case cold quench, you can go to using dry ice normally, or you can use liquid nitrogen, or you can use liquid helium if you can afford it. Well, of course, you have different problem when you go that cold. I mean, there are a lot of stress, and at some point the stress so much, if you are not careful, the stress so much that you crack your blade altogether. So contraction, it only goes certain point, not exceed a U point. Something got to give. So now most of the time, and for me, I use liquid nitrogen. So to convert, to pretty much compress the whole crystal structure, right? And in that process compression, thing happen. Well, first of all, you have pressure. Now you add even more pressure by compressing. And so that means something to break. But when you add enough pressure, the hexagonal crystal structure, it requires high pressure. But when you have enough high pressure at the jarring point, then you have precipitation of hexagonal. Well, at that point, they get to break off. I mean, pretty much from the jarring point. And then when you heat up, just give enough room, it shrink into the shape of I'm talking about the interlock, and 4, and then carbon in the middle, and then you share the 2. So you're close packing it. So you're pretty much intersecting the thing like that. So you're interlocking of the think of interlocking of the FCC. Think of that way. And so that is the process. Let me see, and then so okay, now you convert some of the retained arsenide or most of it to different form, either HCP, and also in process of freeing up space, then you have more room to convert to monazite. So they convert. As soon as they convert, of course, now you put some stress back. That's why they always doing multiple temper or multiple process to, again, to deal with it. But tempering is all about you expand it, and then you calculate the stress point, dislocation for the monazite. Now that energy already there. Now you give it more energy, and they activate it. That means it will precipitate into cementite. And then cementite is F3C, F3 and then C. 3 iron to 1 carbon. And so now the shape of a triangle, you actually think of a pyramid. Most of the shape, like in computer and drawing shape, you can draw everything using a triangle. You can add it together. And a triangle, you can form a small triangle, you can draw from any other figure because they are close packed on every edge. And so that's the nice thing about a triangle. So they take in the shape of a pyramid, so that actually give it some space. But the problem is, it comes together because of now you have certain favorable conditions for the more cementite to come together. But because of that shape, it doesn't really lock in place, so it's brittle. So cementite is brittle. Okay, now that long-winded talk, what my process do extra. This is where people wink or laugh about it. my process is, in addition to convert retain austenite using cryogenic quench and soak and quench and all like that. I also have the process that take dislocation from pretty much from the matrix itself and transformed it into more of the hexagonal structure. In this case is carbide. Think that way, a stronger version of iron carbide. I think it's probably up to more than chromium level of strength, chromium carbide strength. I just pulled that quick one. But anyway, guessing here. But because it's small and very close, anytime you have something with a low potential energy structure, it takes a lot to break it out. That's all. And also, if it interlocking, also harder to break. And anyway, so my process is to convert dislocation or stress into a lot more of the HCP. And how do I know it's working? Well, I know it's working when I grind things. I grind it so that, when it's the belt consumption, the ceramic belt, I got variable speed, 272. It consumes a lot of belt. And I know that, okay, there are a lot of really small carbide that break the tips, very sharp tips of the ceramic. So, and also, because these are so small, I cannot see with microscope. Maybe not even sure that you can see it with scanning electron, because they fall, I'm guessing they're about 30 nanometer range or even less. So a very small particle. So this process, I named my process, I call simulated Bose-Einstein condensate, because I give it so much pressure that any dislocation, I just going to, in other words, I just break it off. And so therefore, in essence, I freed up a lot of, because I've taken a more of a compact form, better packaging ratio here. So now I can do more retain austenite to monazite conversion, more of it happen, and also more carbide happen. And so now I keep my high because I do temper. I raise my temperature of my blades about a little bit above 150 Celsius, and but below, but when 150 to 160, which is about 300 Fahrenheit to 325 Fahrenheit here. And so for this knife, for example, it's at 69.25 Rockwell, HRC. It's very hard. This is a CBM 10B. And so that is the temper. For me, I call that the temper working edge. That means it is suitable to do, what you need to get, use it for. And okay, now you say, okay, I don't need 69. Does 69 way better than 67? I don't, depending on what you use it, I don't think they're that huge of a difference, but I think there are big difference between 69 and 64. Because in order to, for like this to go to 64, I have to temper it, acculate toward 500 plus Celsius or over 1,000 degrees. Because I go to 450, I still end up with 66, 67 around there. So, but at that point, if I go up the temperature too high, I lost, I think, the HCP, the hexagonal. Now it's already, you give it enough activation, it will decompose itself, probably into cementite or into ferrite. They just break out. Because, when you iron, you have a carbon in the middle, in the excited state, the atomic radius increase. So is the iron. So at some point they're too far apart. They just poof, break out, break away. So I'm going to lose hexagonal. So I don't want that. And that's why I want to stay below 200 Celsius. But, and that I always say, when in doubt, I want to keep my blade hard in case that some time down the line you say, hey, I wish mine is hard. Let me check the camera real quick. And so, how do I make it softer? Say by half a Rockwell, C Rockwell. Okay, I got say this is a thing for ice water, right? And pretend that's so. Dip the thing in here, cool the handle, and got some wet paper towel. Grab around the edge or so, right? Get wet paper towel. Heat up to the temperature. I mean, I would recommend about 190 Celsius or 170 or 180. And you heat up canola oil, and then you dip it in there, move it around, and you can put your finger here to feel that if it's too hot on your finger or not. Size around because the edge is thin. It heat up very fast, and also in liquid, it conduct right into the blade, heat up quickly to the temperature. And after slicing them, 5-10 seconds, dip into the ice one, and then dry it, right? And then dip in the oil again. Do it, 2-3 times. Your blade going to drop down about half a Rockwell, or up to 1.5, depending on the type of metal here. Because this thing is so high alloy, it doesn't drop that much. But if you have either lower alloy and either lower carbon there, it will drop more. So you drop between about half a Rockwell to 1.5 to go from, say, this case 310, 315 Fahrenheit to 350 to 375, or you can go all the way to 400 Fahrenheit, or about 205 or 203 or something Celsius. It doesn't matter really, and it's not going to ruin anything, and you still have it. But the key is, my recommend is use the knife, and you find out, oh, I need a little more of, say, ductility or something. Well, you gain a little bit. But if you go, say, somehow that you dip into, say, molten lead or something, you quickly heat it up to too high, well, depend on the metal. I mean, I think it will have a adverse effect. I mean, negative effect. Because your hexagonal is going to be gone. You have a lot more cementite. But if you are high enough temperature, then the carbon going to bind with the alloy and element, like chromium. So now you form with chromium, but carbide. But when about 600 Fahrenheit to, say, 1,000, you form a lot of small chromium, so it's not too bad. It's chromium and not too bad. But when you go higher than that, higher than 975 or something, then the chromium carbide coarser, which in the same time your corrosion resistance drop, and the carbide get larger, so you actually you gain some ductility, but at the same time actually you gain breathiness from coarse carbide, because carbide put pressure on things around it. So you gain maybe somewhere resistant, but again then you lost other attributes. So that's the reason why. When all go back to that is this lengthy thing is my process after a lot of tests, and then for me so far with what I claim and what my so far from in hand tests, and hopefully some other people testing, and to feel that this case is maybe subjective, but that's why you have to put it into the machine to figure it out, maybe a transmission electron or even a atomic force or something, before you figure out how much HCP did I successfully convert dislocation into HCP form. Right? Well, thanks very much for watching.